Fujiwara Hidesato could not sleep while peace prevailed. He hungered for the scent of violence. Buckling twin swords to his waist, he took up a bow taller than himself, a quiver of arrows heavy with intent. The road led to Seita no Karashi, where Lake Biwa waited like a black mirror, hungry for stories. He walked without looking back, for warriors who look back become pillars of salt, or worse, men who remember fear. The dragon lay across the bridge like a fallen pine, trunk thick, scaled in armor that drank the light. Its body spanned the width entirely. One claw upon the parapet, tail against the other side. Smoke curled from its nostrils, black, oily, stinking of sulfur. It pretended to sleep, but Hidesato knew a trap when he saw one. The scales gleamed like wet obsidian. The bridge groaned beneath the weight of something ancient and patient. He did not turn back. Crunch. His sandal broke a scale. Crunch. He stepped between the coils, over the spine, walking the length of the beast, as one walks a tightrope over hell. The dragon did not strike. It let him pass, breathing fire that warmed his heels. When he reached the other side, he did not look back. To look back is to invite the serpent into your shadow. He walked on, heart hammering like a war drum. A voice called him, soft as tide pulling pebbles. He turned. Where the serpent had lain, a man bowed low, forehead scraping stone. Red hair spilled like blood across shoulders. Upon his brow sat a crown carved from a dragon's skull. His robes were sea green, sewn with shells that whispered secrets when he moved. "I'm the Dragon King," he said, and his teeth were too sharp for a mortal man. "You're the first who did not run." The king spoke of Mount Mikami, where a centipede wounded its body 7 times around the peak like a noose. Each night it descended, eyes burning like funeral pyres, and carried off his children one by one into the dark. "I'm powerless," he said, trembling. "My palace shakes, my family dwindles. Soon I too shall be devoured." He pointed with a finger that ended in a claw. "Will you kill it for me? Will you stain your hands with its ichor?" Down they went. The waters parted before the Dragon King, rising like black silk curtains. Hidesato walked through the flood, and his clothes remained dry, as if the lake refused to touch him. Below, a palace of white marble gleamed, not built by human hands. Goldfish with faces like drowned children served wine. Carp played kotos with fingers that were once fins. The air tasted of copper and old magic. This was a place where men were digested, not honored. They feasted on lotus leaves turned to crystal, sweet and sharp enough to cut the tongue. Chopsticks of ebony, cold as bones, picked at raw fish that still twitched on coral plates. 10 goldfish dancers emerged, moving with the boneless grace of things that swim in the dark. Their eyes were black and empty. Behind them, red carp musicians played melodies that made the teeth ache. The wine was amber thick and tasted of forgetting. Midnight approached on cat's paws. Tramp, tramp, the palace shook. Dust fell from the marble ceiling like snow. On the balcony, the Dragon King clutched Hidesato's arm, his fingers cold as a corpse's. 2 balls of fire descended the mountain, bobbing, burning. "The centipede," he whispered, spittle flecking his lips. "It comes for its prey. It comes for me." The fire grew larger, illuminating the winding body of the worm, its 100 feet glowing like distant lanterns strung across the mountain's throat. Hidesato demanded his bow. Only 3 arrows remained in the quiver. He fitted one to the string, the wood groaning under the tension. He aimed for the space between the fire, right between the eyes. The string sang. The arrow flew true, striking the centipede's skull with a sound like iron on stone. It glanced off, harmless, spinning into the dark. The centipede did not slow. Its mandibles clicked like dry bones. The Dragon King began to weep. 2 arrows left. Hidesato's hands did not shake. He drew again, muscles straining against the huge bow he fired. Again the strike, again the clang of failure. The arrow fell to earth, impotent. The centipede was invulnerable to steel. It wound lower now, its body casting shadows that moved like living things. The Dragon King collapsed, trembling. "We are lost," he moaned. "The beast cannot be killed. We are meat. The warrior said nothing. He had one arrow left. One arrow, one chance. Hidesato remembered old wives' tales. Human saliva is poison to centipedes. He drew the final arrow, iron-tipped, and ran the point across his tongue, coating it in spit. The Dragon King watched, horrified. The warrior fitted the notch, drew back until the bow bent like a crescent moon, and aimed for the brain. He released it. The arrow sang through the dark, a thin promise. It struck. This time it did not glance away. It bit deep. The centipede convulsed. Its body tightened around the mountain 7 times, then slackened, unspooling like a drop skein of yarn. The fire in its eyes dimmed from rage to sunset, then to storm cloud, then to black. Thunder cracked. The heavens wept blood rain. Lightning carved the lake. The palace shook as if the world were ending, and perhaps it was, a world where that worm lived. When dawn came, the water was red. The centipede floated, belly up, vast and dead. They emerged from their hiding places, the Dragon King, his wives with scales at their throats, his children with gills fluttering. They prostrated themselves before Hidesato, pressing their foreheads to the bloody tiles. Preserver, they chanted, Lord of the Lake. Their gratitude was heavy, cloying, a debt that could never be fully paid. They looked at him with eyes that were too grateful, too hungry. He had saved them, but in doing so, he had become theirs. Another feast, more terrible than the first. Coral trays that looked like bleached bone held fish that still gasped, their eyes reflecting the warrior's face. Crystal dishes contained jellies that moved on their own. The wine was darker now, tasting of iron and deep places. They begged him to stay forever, to live in the palace beneath the waves. Stay, they whispered, stay and be a king. But Hidesato knew that crowns underwater are just another kind of chain. At the porch, the servants transformed. Fish leapt from the water, scales splitting to reveal silk, fins becoming fingers. They became men in ceremonial robes, wearing crowns of dragon bone, carrying gifts, a bell that screamed when struck, a bag of rice that rustled with whispers, a roll of silk that seemed to breathe, a cooking pot that steamed with phantom heat. They formed a procession to follow him home, their eyes reflecting the green of the lake. His household had waited through the storm, fearing him drowned. When they saw him approach, they cheered, then fell silent. Behind him walked the strangers in dragon crowns, carrying impossible burdens. They reached the house. The retainers set down the gifts upon the earth. Then, as one, they dissolved into mist, into scales, into nothing. Only the gifts remained, humming with power. The family stared at the warrior, and he knew they would never look at him the same way again. The bag of rice never emptied. Each morning it was full, though they scooped and scooped, feeding the household, feeding the village. The roll of silk never shortened, though they cut and cut, making garments that fit too well, that seemed to cling like skin. The bell he gave to the temple, but at midnight it rang itself, a sound like screaming. The cooking pot boiled water without fire. The rice tasted sweet, too sweet, like a debt being repaid. They renamed him Tawara Toda, my Lord Bag of Rice. A name that speaks of inexhaustible bounty, of the Dragon King's eternal gratitude, of the man who walked over serpents and killed mountains with spit and steel. He lived long, they say, and he never hungered. But sometimes at night he would wake to find his sheets wet with lake water and hear the tramp, tramp of something walking on the mountain. And he would reach for his bow,